Hey everybody, AC here, and welcome back to another episode of Danny Phantom Vlogs Revisit. This time we are talking about the episode Livin Large. And, this episode, Danny and the Fentons become rich. The government ends up buying Fenton Works from them, and we never really get to see exactly how much they sell it for. We just know that there's a lot of zeros there. And I love that that's the joke. Danny puts a lock on the Fenton portal, so the guys in white who are taking over can't do whatever they want to do. And after settling into their new house, Danny and Sam both feel uneasy about what the guys in white could be up to. And then Tucker is the one who convinces Danny to not worry about it and instead enjoy living the rich life. And Danny, after being convinced by Tucker, starts to enjoy the rich life a little too much. Tucker is kind of like the instigator in this. Like he's the one who convinces Danny to start acting like a spoiled rich guy. Danny he really does start acting like a spoiled rich kid. He ends up having robot versions of Sam and Tucker created. And he has a butler named Hobson, who apparently can make a shake out of any ingredients. He can make a shake out of any two ingredients. So let's see. So Sam and Tucker find out after investigating. They find out that the guys in white are planning. The guys in white are planning to open the Ghost Zone portal and send a missile into the Ghost Zone to destroy it. But since the Ghost Zone is the flip side to our world, to the human world, once the Ghost Zone goes, the human world goes with it. Let's see. So Sam and Danny end up warning. Sam and Tucker end up warning Danny about what's going to happen. Danny blows them off. Danny blows them off at first, really taking the whole spoiled rich kid lifestyle to heart, and he gets told off. He is told off by Sam and Tucker, and he realizes his mistake, and he goes into the Ghost Zone in order to basically stop the missile from the inside. He ends up teaming up with with Johnny and Skulker and Youngblood. He teams up with all three of them in order to save the Ghost Zone. He manages to send a giant rock to the Ghost Zone portal, which causes the missile to blow up before entering the Ghost Zone. It's a ghost zone bomb, so it blows things up in that realm, but it just makes things sticky in the human world. And the guys in white have been having such difficulty with Fenton Works that they've begun to suspect that the place is cursed, the place is haunted. And their bomb suddenly exploding into a bunch of gum just basically confirms it for them. So they rush out. Sam and Tucker are safe. The Fentons get their home back and are no longer rich. And Danny is back to being his usual self. All in all, I feel like this is like one of the weaker episodes of the season. Like this, it was very predictable. It was incredibly predictable, like what was going to happen. All the way through, like even as a kid when I first watched it, I knew exactly where it was heading. So I remember not enjoying this one too much as a kid. As an adult, one thing I do find entertaining. Sorry. But one thing I do find entertaining is that the guys in white have no idea how to run anything in Fenton Works because they're all of their technology is very gimmicky. Like you have to use it in certain ways. You have to hold this up at a certain angle. You have to lean this other thing in a certain way. You have to bang a mug on this other thing just to get this stuff to work properly. It's very gimmicky, very finicky, and that's because they don't have money. They don't have a ton of money. They're not rich. They're not made of money, so they have to make do with what they've got. And they've gotten used to that. The Fentons have gotten used to that, but the guys in white are used to everything working properly. So when this stuff doesn't work properly, they just think, something must be wrong here. This place has to be cursed. They cannot fathom the idea that this stuff is finicky. That the Fentons had to make do with what they had. So that's entertaining. That's entertaining. But the rest, that's entertaining, and I do like Hobson. I like Hobson. Hobson was a good one-off character. He was a good one-off butler character. I feel bad for him because some of the shakes that Danny and Tucker had him make sound absolutely disgusting. And like he had gag reflexes every time they told him to make a new shake. Yeah, I would probably have gag reflexes too if I had to be the one to make that stuff. Because that sounds so gross. So, but like those are really the only entertaining parts of this episode. I will say Danny is kind of at his worst in this episode. I feel like Danny is at his worst in this episode. Like, it takes one conversation from Tucker to get him to be like, you know what, you're right. I'm gonna be a spoiled brat from now on, and not care about anything or anyone but my money. And yeah, like Tucker also shares some blame. Like Danny was actually concerned with what the guys in white were doing. Until Tucker is like, hey, you should enjoy the rich life and start acting like a spoiled rich guy. So, Tucker instigated it, but Danny really did kind of take things a little too far. And I get that these are like episodic episodes. I feel like they should have I feel, however, we have had two-parter episodes before. I feel like this would have benefited from being a two-part episode. I feel like this really would have benefited, like maybe the first half of part one focuses on. Maybe the first half of part one would focus on them in their everyday life, and then in the second half of part one they become rich. They become rich, and we see him struggling to be the same while also having all this money and not letting the money corrupt him. And then in part two, we see him corrupted, only for in the climax of part two, him to realize his mistake, and he goes back to save his friends. Everything happened so quickly, none of it really felt deserved. Like, it felt like he turned into being a jerk too quickly. It felt like he turned back to being normal too quickly. It felt like everybody forgave him too quickly. I feel like this should have been like a two-parter. If they wanted to tell this story well, it should have been a two-parter. But at the same time, we've also seen this kind of story in other shows before. So we've seen this kind of story in other shows before, so them wanting to just kind of fast forward through it also makes sense. But then why would you tell this story in the first place if you just wanted to fast forward through it and get through it as soon as possible? So yeah, it's complicated. It's complicated. I feel like there were ways to make this story better, but at the same time, I just don't really like stories like this in the first place. So yeah. But as an episode, this is one of the weaker ones. I'm trying hard to think if there are episodes. There's a couple episodes in season 2 and season 1 that I am not particularly fans of. Is this as bad as those? Yeah, this is honestly like the weakest out of all of season 3. I'm gonna give this a D. I'm gonna give this a D. Not an F, a D. I don't think I've given a single F in this. I'll have to go back and rewatch each episode of this to make sure. But yeah, I'm gonna give this a D. So anyway, that's it. That's all I got for this episode. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone.